All right. So we have jumped fully into the Peace Pilgrim. We are on the chapter titled Living a Simple Life, which I think is five, maybe. Let's see. Yeah, chapter five, Living a Simple Life. And she was talking last week about simplifying your life, getting your possessions down to really what you need. And I like the way she talks around it because she doesn't get too extreme. She gets extreme by her example. That's the wonderful thing about her. Her suggestions are very mildly given and very realistically presented, but then her example is miles beyond what she's saying, which really and truly, really, it is the way it should be, I think, as I say from my comfort zone in the Santa Barbara Monastery. But it is a lovely ideal to basically outdo your own teaching. It's a wonderful uh, testament, really, to her character, which she doesn't need a testament to her character. Really, she's one of those wonderful people that lives according to her principle, that thinks something and then does it, which is a marvelous thing that I've always appreciated in other people. And so she was just telling us last week, she says, unnecessary possessions are unnecessary burdens. If you have them, you have to take care of them, right? You have to take care of them. You have to have always a place for them. I've watched. I grew up in a very interesting circumstance in the military, and so we moved every year. I moved 14 times before I was 18, I think, and because of that, we kept everything at a minimum in the house. We didn't get much more. Like we were the only house on the block usually that had no boxes in the garage at all. Our garage was always perfectly clean and empty. And we used to empty out a box from our own stuff every now and then. Every time before we moved, Mom would give each one of us three boys an empty box, and we had to go into our rooms and find a box worth of stuff that we were getting rid of before we moved. And we did that before every move. And so, it's a great practice. I have a few rules that I try and follow. Like if I have some storage boxes even here, up in the closet there. And after a year, if I haven't gone into that box, if I haven't needed to get the stuff out of it in the last year, I consider 1 year a full cycle. And if I don't use something in a full year, I don't need it. And I have found from my past lessons not to even open the box. If you know it's been there for a year and you haven't opened it, haven't used it, give it to a friend, put it in the trash, burn it, whatever you're going to do. Get rid of it. Don't open it. If you open it, I'm sure I could use this for something. Oh, Francine's having a birthday on Saturday. I can use this little whistle for that. Uh, it's like one of my brothers, one of my monastic brothers in Olima. My goodness. And back when I first joined, one of my first tasks from Swami Prabhupada was to empty the barn, to clean the barn out at the Olima retreat. And, we had about five monks living there at that time, and they had all been there for about 40 years, each one of them. And it was Vedananda, Sitananda, uh, uh, Vimukta, Shri. Those guys were all out there. And boy, the arm wrestling I had to do, the fighting I had to do with those monks to get to get rid of stuff out of that barn. They had uses for everything. I'd pull out a broken pane of glass and they'd be like, well, look, we can cut out that square there. You know, no, we don't have any windows that size, but that's a good square piece of glass. We should keep it for that. It's like, okay. And so I learned very young that part of being a brahmachari means opening the other door at the barn. And while you're having one brother talk about keeping stuff with another one of the brothers, you're just steadily going back and forth, throwing stuff out the back door so that they're not they're not watching it go by. And I took five dump trucks, not pickup loads, dump truck loads, a real dump truck. We had a real dump truck there for the big work. I took five of those to the dump from that barn. 40 years of monastic savings.
So
Very
don't
important stuff.
monasteries have,
What's
I'm
that?
sorry, don't monasteries have some sort of a rules as to number of possessions monks can have?
No,
There are no rules whatsoever.
not in that sense. I mean, especially in the order, the Ramakrishna order, it is not in favor of rules. We've got principles, and we try and follow those principles. But it really is once you've become a sannyasin, it's between you and God. And there's not really anybody looking into that. It's really trusted that you are doing what you need to be doing. So there's not much policing, not much rules, not many rules going on,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is the healthier thing. Although I think we might be a little bit lax. We do have a few brothers that collect a bit more than they need. But our renunciation really is not so much a rule on what you own and don't own. It's basically keeping things to a minimum, just in a general way. There's nothing wrong with owning things. The danger is attaching to things, and like that. And we don't have much space. Most of the monks live in a single room or share a single room in a lot of places, and so you're allowed to fit what you can in your own space, right? And so, yeah, no, there's not rules, but there is a principle, and everybody's encouraged to that principle. And if you're violating that principle, they really leave
And
it between.
monastics will make this decision for themselves.
Right. Yeah, they leave that between you and God, and I really prefer it that way myself. Not because it's easier or anything, but it's cleaner. It really is between you and God, and it really is not about following rules, and it really isn't about those kinds of measures. And so I think the principles work much better. Vivekananda is the one. There was one of the monks early on had written up a whole bunch more rules that he thought were necessary for the order that would be better for it. And he took them to Vivekananda. And Vivekananda, did just he's like, rule what is this? No, we don't need rules. We need love and principles. That's all. He says the fewer rules, the healthier the organization. And so in that sense.
I really like it. I'm not the one for rules either, so that's very I
Yeah.
very attractive kind of a idea just between you and God.
Yeah, it's very nice. And the order, that's one of the things, one of the few things quite a few things actually, that I really appreciate about the order. One of them is that idea of running on principles, but the second idea too is that, and this is the sannyas tradition in general. The sannyas tradition, a sannyasin is not answerable to anybody but God. And so the reason the conversation came up, I was talking to Prabhutananda. They were looking for a replacement for one of the head swamis who had just recently passed away, and they had asked several swamis to come, and several of those swamis had said no. And I was kind of confused. I didn't know that a swami was allowed to say no to a senior. I just assumed that if you had a senior, whatever the senior said, you had to do, because that's sort of the brahmachari training when you're a brahmachari. But it turns out that in India and in the tradition, a sannyasin is independent of any authority and is answerable only to God, and that includes the legal system in India. When I took my vows, I had to memorize a sannyas mantra, and I was told that in India, if a sannyasin is arrested for a crime and it goes to court, that if he claims sannyas, they have a court sannyas who can go into a back room with you, and all you have to do is recite the mantra, this sannyas mantra, which to my knowledge has not been written down. And I was forbidden to write it down, which made it rather problematic for me. But um, that monks are not prosecuted. You can't prosecute a monk because they're outside of society. which means they're outside of those societal norms. And which I found fascinating, to be honest with you. But I asked Swami Prabhupada, I said, well, how do you run an international organization where nobody has to obey anybody? I said, how is that possible? And he said, with love and respect. He said, that's how the order runs. You know, our senior swamis get their authority by our respect for their lives and our love for their person. And that's how the order goes forward. And I walked away with that with the biggest smile on my face. I thought that's exactly the right answer. I love that ideal, you know, that love and respect would be your official means of authority in an order. So our peace pilgrim here, unnecessary possessions are unnecessary burdens. I like how she doesn't just start by giving a rule. You know, you should own minimum stuff. You shouldn't have anything that you don't need. She doesn't start that way. She starts with the reason. Unnecessary possessions are unnecessary burdens. They're going to distract you from your task and from the things that you need to get done. If you have them, you have to take care of them, right? It's that same with like pets, you know, people who can't travel because they have pets. You know, it always boggles my mind. It's like, what are you talking about? You can't travel because you have a pet? Well, somebody has to watch them. Well, I won't tell you what I told them actually, but I said, well, just eat them and go. Pet owners don't like me to say that though, so I took it back. Don't worry. It's not my official teaching on that score. All right, so she goes on here and he says, I'll tell you about one more woman. She was liberated, although not in the best possible way. I saw her only occasionally, but I happened to see her about a month after her huge house, in which she and her husband had been living alone since the children were grown, had burned down while they'd been out. They lost everything except the clothes that they were wearing. Remembering how attached she had been to the huge house, in spite of the fact that it was such a burden for her to take care of it, I started to say a few words of sympathy, but she said, oh, don't sympathize with me. Now you could have the morning after, but not now. Just think, I will never have to clean that attic. I'll never have to clean out all those clothes closets. I'll never have to clean that basement. Why, I've never felt so free. I just feel like I'm starting my life all over again. Right. And we talked a little bit about that, that if you actually carry through with these things and do keep yourself at a minimum, the only time it's hard is when you're on this side of the job, right? When you're sitting there deciding what to get rid of and how much to get rid of and whether you really want to get rid of. That's the hardest part. And I find the fewer questions you ask yourself, the better off you are. You know, just take them and go. Just get rid of it. If you don't like throwing things out, then put them on the sidewalk for a day, you know, before they go out. And the thing is that you'll always find that the task was only difficult on this side. When you get to the other side, when you've gotten rid of the stuff, there's nothing but this sense of freedom. There's nothing but this sense of whew, all that stuff. You don't realize how stuff weighs down on you, you know, weighs down on you. So that's why, of course, I'm a monk, so I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So there's not much merit there, but you know, that's my goal. Every time that I move from one place to another, I always make sure I don't take more than 5 boxes. So that's my rule. So now I have 2 boxes that are 25 feet by 40 feet high. Okay. I can tell nobody's entertained. I have to calm it down a bit today. So she says, I feel free. I'm just starting all over again. She and her husband were living in a sensible sized apartment now. And indeed, I'm sure they really did experience a wonderful sense of freedom. But wouldn't it have been better if they had learned to give and had extended their surplus toward those who needed it? Then they would have been blessed by the giving, and others would have been blessed by the getting. In any case, it was a situation which liberated them, which is a great point. Yes, they got forced into it by having their house burned down, But think how much generosity would have been displayed if they had been able to get rid of it and not just had it burn up, right? And so this leads to that next point that it's not just about not owning things. That's not the point of this exercise. The point of this exercise is creating a generous heart within yourself so that you don't collect more things for yourself than what you need. You've got your eyes on others and their needs, and that you look for opportunities, to take care. I've seen a lot of these videos starting to show up where people are paying for people's groceries, at the store just as a nice gesture. And of course, it's true they always film it and get all of the attention on YouTube. I think that's a forgivable thing. I know they're doing it for name and fame, and that's fine. But people do a lot of things for name and fame, and if generosity is going to be your choice, I support you in it. In that sense. And so, really, just to learn to have an eye of service. Remember how she talked about being God's butler, right? That she would just, where she considered every moment, she would treat the moment as if she was God's butler, that she's standing, or God's waiter, or dining room attendant, that she sits there just scanning the dining room, scanning the dinner table, making sure there's nothing that anybody needs, just constantly ready for service. And that was really her attitude. And that's what she's pointing at here. It's like our not having much really is about our inner comfort and our inner freedom, but it's not about rules, and it's not about, as we were talking earlier, it's not like that. This is how we develop a loving heart. This is how we set ourselves free inside to be compassionate and to share our stuff, right? And that's just by not making ourselves our first thought all the time, as in our possessions as well. She goes on, says, if you are free, I recommend a hiking trip on a wilderness footpath. How inspiring it is to walk all day in the sunshine and sleep all night under the stars. What a wonderful experience in simple, natural living. Since you carry your food, your sleeping equipment, etc., on your back, you learn quickly that unnecessary possessions are unnecessary burdens. You soon realize what the essentials of life are, such as warmth when you're cold, a dry spot on a rainy day, the simplest food when you are hungry, pure, cool water when you are thirsty. You soon put material things in their proper place, realizing that they are not for use, but relinquishing them when they are not useful. You soon experience and learn to appreciate the great freedom of simplicity. Right? This is a great idea. Because I like her little list there, the things that are necessary. She's not like, okay, you need a hammock and a big pillow and fluffy slippers and don't forget your tarot cards. She's not, she doesn't say that. Her things that are necessary is warmth when you're cold. That's not even a possession, right? Clean water, clean, cool water when you're thirsty, right? Warmth when you're cold, a dry spot on a rainy day, and just some simple food, a handful of nuts, a big piece of cheese when you're hungry. Those are the most satisfying things. And so even without having done her little exercise here, you get a really good read on what she's talking about. This is the natural way of living, right? You think most peoples in the beginnings of times were uh, nomads wandering around because that's how they took care of the planet. They would hunt in a place, and when the hunting got sparse, then it was time to pack up the teepees and move on to the next place. And that way, each place got a chance to recover, and the food remained, and everybody was provided for. But in that moving around, you certainly would learn what's necessary because your mama would give you a box and tell you to fill it with your giveaway stuff, right? From May to October of 1952, before the pilgrimage, I walked the 2,000 miles of the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine, with 500 additional miles for side trips to points of special beauty. I lived out of doors completely, supplied with only one pair of slacks and shorts, one blouse and a sweater, a lightweight blanket, and a double plastic sheets, into which I sometimes stuffed leaves. I was not always completely dry and warm, but I enjoyed it thoroughly. My menu, morning and evening, was 2 cups of uncooked oatmeal soaked in water, flavored with brown sugar. At noon, 2 cups of double strength dried milk, plus any berries, nuts, or greens found in the woods. I had been thoroughly prepared for my pilgrimage by this toughening process. A walk along the highway seemed easy by comparison. I did not realize that she went to this extent. Just picking roots and leaves in the woods, you know, soaked oatmeal. This is pretty amazing, pretty beautiful. And her whole mode here, she hasn't talked about renunciation at all. She hasn't used the word renunciation at all, which is delightful because she does not see this as a loss, as a thing that needs to be renounced. This is a natural, healthy, and happiest way of being, and that's how she's presenting it. This is how a human is. You don't need it. You don't need it. It's not a sacrifice to get rid of it. It's actually a favor to yourself to get rid of it, right? That's mature renunciation. That's proper renunciation, right? We always talk about that. The renunciation is not about what you're leaving behind. Renunciation is always what you're going toward that's causing you to leave things behind. So that you always keep your eyes on your ideal. You don't look back at how difficult it is to get rid of things or how much you don't want to get rid of things, right? And so I love how she's phrasing this, giving us the joys of it, showing us the naturalness of it, showing us that there's no need for fear in doing this, that you're going to feel amazing, you're going to feel free, lighter, more content with yourself. You're going to become more generous as a person. You see, I love how she's talking about it and really showing us in a way that doesn't require as much courage as sometimes we talk about renouncing everything. That makes it sound so difficult and absolute and final, right? But if we talk in terms of being as we are, free, unencumbered, unattached, that we see the benefit. We see that this is the natural and best way for living. How good it is to eat fruit, tasty and ripe, from the tree, and vegetables fresh and crisp from the field. Right? And how good it would be for the farming of the future to concentrate on the non-use of poisonous substances, such as sprays, so food would be fit to go from farm to table. One morning for breakfast, I had blueberries covered with dew, picking them from the bushes as I journeyed through the New England mountains. I thought of my fellow human beings eating various kinds of processed and flavored foods, and I realized that if I could choose my breakfast from all the foods in the world, I would not make a better choice than blueberries covered with dew. In the spring and summer, when the days are long, how good it is to get up with the sun and to go to bed with the sun. In the fall and winter, when the days are shorter, you can enjoy some of the night. I am inclined to agree that there is a substance in the air left by the sun, which diminishes after the sun goes down and can be absorbed only while you sleep. Sleeping from 9 to 5 is about right for me. How good it is to work in the invigorating fresh air, under the life-giving sun, amid the inspiring beauty of nature. There are many who recognize this, like the young man I met whose life had been interrupted by the peacetime draft. While he was away, his father, who was in poor health, was not able to keep up the farm, and so it was sold. The young man then undertook to do years of distasteful work in order to be able to buy another farm. How good it is to earn your livelihood helping plants to grow to provide people with food. In other words, how good it is to earn your livelihood by contributing constructively to the society in which you live. Everyone should, of course, and in a healthy society, everyone would. Right? And this is kind of the reason we really struggle as a society for these things is because we have this capitalistic idea at the center. And the end game of capitalism is to get as much for as little as possible. Right? How can a society work and function in a healthy way when everybody is trying to get as much as possible for as little as possible? right? That's this thing. That's the problem with measuring the world by money. It's almost utterly unimportant whether you can afford something or not, right? That is not how we decide, or not. It should not be the only way we decide things in life. You know, you decide your budget and then you do the best thing possible with that money, and you look for ways to garnish it with other things because we're people of love, not people of pennies. You know, not counting our pennies. I remember in San Francisco in the old days when I moved there in 1985, all of the neighborhoods used to have their own uh, annual fairs, you know, a little neighborhood fair. And it was goofy, it was corny, it was very homegrown because it was the people in the neighborhood that put up the little tents down the middle of the street, and the ice cream shop would give away little free cups of ice cream, and the pizza shop would give away little slices of pizza, and and the clothing shop would have raffles, and it was just a community of people from that neighborhood getting together and celebrating their neighborhood with the things they had. And I noticed after I'd been in San Francisco for about 5 years, somebody somewhere got the idea. I'm sure a salesman came in where a big corporation came in and said, "Hey, we can put these street fairs on for a much cheaper rate than what you're spending now, and we'll do all the cleanup, and blah blah blah." And so, one by one, the neighborhoods all hired this company, and gone were all of the little native things, like the ice cream company giving away free ice cream, the pizza shop giving away free pizza. And it was suddenly just the same people selling the same arty goods at every street fair. Every street fair became the same street fair. And then when people lost interest in coming, they started putting beer gardens in to try and encourage more people to come. And of course, that changed the entire energy of the whole thing. And I just watched all that happen and I thought, you see, this is not the way to do it, my friends. We're human beings. Giving is key. It's not the fair. The fair is just an opportunity, an opportunity for us to be together and care about each other, to give away stuff to each other, to get to know each other. The fair is just an opportunity. That wasn't the thing. And by making that the thing and eliminating the stuff that made it human, that made it special, we lost the ideal, right? We lost something very important, I felt like. And so in our lives, remember, your time is not money, your time is love. And with your time, you do things for love. And what does that mean? I noticed in Colorado there when I did my art, that I cared very little about how much people paid for it. I cared more that it got to somebody who liked it, who enjoyed it, because I enjoyed making it. My payment for the art was not the money when I sold it. It was the enjoyment and the investigation of creating it. That was my payment. That's what I enjoyed. And so this idea of life as love, time as love, is a wonderful way to inform your life so that it's not a matter of having enough time to do things. It's a matter of having enough time to love, to do what you love, right? And to invest yourself in things, that you give away to others, writing notes. I keep wanting to do more and more of this writing, and I'm trapped. I'm trapped. I've only done a few of them because it takes a lot of effort. And that's what makes it special. It's what makes it special. I bought this little handheld uh, paper tablet here, for that sole reason, because I can handwrite my notes in it, and I can handwrite emails and whatnot. And so it's funny because I've only handwritten one email to someone actually who's right here on the screen, and I never sent it to them because for for no reason that I couldn't figure out how to attach it to my email. So I've got this long letter written. Anyway, you'll get it someday, whoever you are out there. So this idea, just look at your life, look at the quality of your life, how many things require not for you to pay or buy or get things, but to make things, you know, to do things with your hands. As much as I dislike gardening, I only dislike starting gardening. Once I get out and get going, I love it. I love that time in the garden, and especially if you start growing your own garden and watching things develop, watching things bloom is I feel like a little kid, when I watch I planted a whole bunch of these little I didn't even know what they were. They were just coming up somewhere and I transplanted them into the garden. And they turned out to be these bushes that grew about 3 feet high and sprouted these bright orange little puffball flowers all over them. And I tell you, the morning I first went out into the kitchen to get my cup of coffee, I looked out the window and saw these big puffball orange flowers all over the garden. I was like a little kid. I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. I'd never seen a flower like that, right? And I really encourage you, move back into the planet. Move back into living, right? And take your time to do the things that you love with your own hands. I have tons of stories because I've learned this lesson so many times in my life. I remember when I first got my own apartment back in 1983, I guess it was. And I went out to the art store and I bought all of these ready-made posters and hung them up in there. And I went and bought ready-made pillows and ready-made desk and a little ready-made bed. Everything was, from all those different companies. And then I invited my friend Mike Lindy over to come to my housewarming party. And he came over to my it was just a studio apartment. And he walked in and he was very honest. He said, "Oh, it's all right." I was really hurt. I was like, "My first apartment? What do you mean, it's all right?" I said, "I decorated all this stuff yourself." And he said, "Anybody could live here." He said, "What about this apartment makes it yours? All of your art is somebody else's art. All of your furniture was purchased, just like anybody can purchase furniture. There's nothing here that makes this apartment yours. I can walk in probably more than a dozen of these on this block alone." And I looked around the room and I thought, God, that's absolutely right. There's absolutely nothing in here that is uniquely me or uniquely mine. And so that started a whole thing for me. I started really exploring life at that point. I went for a month with no electricity. I decided to live for a month with no electricity. I had no ideas how many candles that was going to require. But I learned. And the thing was, when the sun goes down and you light a candle, very different feeling to your apartment than turning a light on. Very different. We sit down to read by candlelight, very different experience to read by candlelight. Sit down to draw a picture on candlelight. These are some of the things I did that I just realized. It's funny that you can't really know how much that adds to the atmosphere of where you live, to live by candlelight. Of course, I only did it for a month because the number of candles that you have to burn to get enough light to live in your apartment is really something. But it was a beautiful insight to these efforts that we do. I got rid of all of my furniture and I didn't have much money, so I bought a lot of plywood. And you know what I did? I built a whole bunch of 1 by 1, 1 foot by 1 foot cubes. And then I did a few 2 by 2 cubes. And then I did a couple of 4 by 4 cubes. And I decided that I could build all the furniture as I needed it because it was a studio apartment, right? And so I couldn't just have a bed taking up all that space all the time. So those two 4 by 4 things, I would at night put them next to each other, put my futon mattress on it, and sleep on them. When I needed a table, I would use one of them as a table, and I'd put two of the one by or four of the 1 by 1s around it, and you could sit at that little 4 by 4 cube on your 1 by 1 cube chair, right? And so that became my living space. And at that point, I decided I would not hang anything on my walls that either I or my friends had not made. That I would not buy anything for my arm and that has stuck. Even as I look around my room here, there is not one thing on my walls that a friend or myself hasn't made, you know? And that adds to life, adds to the quality of life, to the quality of this human experience. And to be offended by being called a consumer, right? Understand what a horrible insult that is by our society that we have so readily been willing to be called consumers. You know, what a horrible thing to call somebody. And yet we accept that so lightly, like, oh, yeah, I'm a consumer. No, you're not a consumer. You're a human being. You know, you're a human being that produces things out of love. That is not a consumer, right? And so really start respecting yourself and your efforts and what you have to give, right? What you have to give. My clothes are most comfortable as well as most practical. I wear navy blue slacks and a long sleeved shirt topped with my lettered tunic. Along the edge of my tunic, both front and rear, are partitioned compartments, which are hemmed up to serve as pockets. These hold all my possessions, which consist of a comb, a folding toothbrush, a ballpoint pen, a map, some copies of my messages and my message, and my mail. So you can see why I answer my mail faster than most. It keeps my pockets from bulging. My slogan is every ounce counts. Beneath my outer garments, I wear a pair of running shorts and a short sleeve shirt, and I'm always prepared for an invigorating swim if I pass a river or a lake. You know, and these quality of life things. I'm not saying it just because it makes life more aesthetic or more cool or more interesting. What it does is it wakes up your individuality. It wakes up your gifts and your love and your concern and your sense of being in the world, which is necessary to develop that constant attention, that constant presence, that constant being, right? And it also breaks down this me, mind thing in a very different way. You know, me and mine is a lot stronger and uglier when it's not you and yours, but it's just stuff you've collected, right? When it's stuff that you've invested love in, your room feels very different. It has an atmosphere. It has a friendliness. It has a depth to it, right? And so I say these things not just for those externals, but because I believe that they are spiritually inclined, right? To become truly self-sufficient, which means why would I go and buy that when I can make that? Or why would I throw that away when I can fix it? And I've learned a lot of this from the monastics, and from the devotees, especially the Indian devotees. Have really taught me how things need not. Because I mean, earlier, well, still pretty much, I have to admit, but I'm a big throwaway person. You know, it's like out it goes, right? And but like down at the convent, we had these wonderful grape lights that were up above the kitchen window for the convent, and they were beautiful. And one of the strands stopped working, you know, and so we were just going to throw them out. And when they went in the throw out box, I saw them in there, and I was like, I wonder if I could fix those, right? I wonder if I can fix those. And so, so now I'm stuck because now I have a box of grape lights in the kitchen that I have to go fix. But that's the downside. But nonetheless, it's that, you know, to think that way. And most of you already do. I know many of you that I'm looking at already think and feel that way. But I'm just encouraging it, you know, this mindful living, this waking up the mind, this ceasing this laziness of the ease of modern life, yeah, and returning to the investment of modern life, right? Our homes don't feel like homes because we don't put the effort into them, you know. It's funny because I live on my own here, and when I am good, when I'm being a good boy, and I'm, you know, making my own breakfast and making my own dinner and baking my own loaf of bread or whatnot like that. Wow. Not that I do that nearly enough, but the little bit that I do it, it has showed me the difference. If you can overcome that laziness and put the effort into things, that is where life gains its depth, its meaning, is by your investment, you investing in your quality of life, putting love into the things that you're doing, respecting yourself, making good food for yourself, doing the things for yourself that you know are healthy, doing the things for yourself that you know are right, that you know are good, and to not let yourself just talk about them or just think about them or just ignore them, but to make an effort. Yes, life is more difficult when you do things on your own, you know. But I remember, when Kumar used to make his yogurt, or when, Kumar used to make his dosas on Saturday mornings in the monastery in DC. What a lovely family thing that became. It became a thing where everybody would come to the center for Kumar's dosas. Just a simple thing like that. Kantasamy, a friend of a devotee in San Francisco, also same thing, learned how to make idlis. And so every week he would come to the monastery one day and make idlis, and that day became a special day in the monastery, and we would invite people. Kantasami's going to make some idli on Thursday. Why don't you come over? And this is how we build community, right? This is how we build community. Bake a loaf of bread every week and invite your neighbors over for a piece of bread and honey. A very homey thing, a very grounded thing to do. And I can tell you that you would not, that when they left after having that fresh bread and honey in your house, you would be better friends than when they walked in, because you gave of yourself. You gave of something you had, that you made, that you invested in. You didn't just open a plastic bag and pull out a piece of bread and throw some honey on it. There was effort, there was humanity, there was love in that. You see, so this is the way that we learn to love again. This is the way that we learn to open our hearts again, and create a culture of community, a culture of sharing, a culture of time is love and not money, right? It's how we can begin this healing process. All right, so she tells us about her clothes and the very few things that she had uh, in there, and her freedom, because it is true, if you don't have anything, you can get up and go. Remember, I told you about Vedananda and his one bag that he always carried every time I'd take him anywhere. I'd always have to wait for him to pack this one little briefcase that he had. And I used to get so annoyed because it would always take so much just time. It was just, I was a brahmachari, I was in a hurry. And he would pack that bag. And I remember at one point I just had it. I was like, Maharaj, why do you always carry that silly bag everywhere? We're just going down to San Jose for a class. Why are you doing that? And he says, no, he says, it was my principle when I joined. It was my vow that I would be able to live wherever I was without needing to get anything extra. And he says, so I always put everything that I need in that bag in case I have to live wherever I'm going. And I thought, wow, there's a bunch of freedom right there. Anytime he goes anywhere, he's ready just to be there. He doesn't have to be back, you know? Think about that. That's a wonderful way to be, that you're completely free. You're not held down by anything. You're like, yeah, let's go. Why not? Right? As I put on my simple clothing one day after a swim in a clear mountain lake, I thought of those who have closets full of clothes to take care of, who carry heavy luggage with them when they travel. I wondered how people would want to burden themselves so, and I felt wonderfully free. This is me and all my possessions. Think of how free I am. If I want to travel, I just stand up and walk away. There's nothing to tie me down. One outfit of clothing is enough. That's all I've owned since my pilgrimage started in 1953. And I take good care of my things. I can always find a wash basin in a public restroom or a nearby stream to wash my clothes. And drying them is even easier. I just put them on and let the energy from the sun evaporate the dampness. That's how she gets away from needing two sets. She just puts on the wet set and lets it dry on her body. It's like, wow. I wash my skin only with water. Soap removes the natural oils. So do cosmetics and creams that most women use. The only footwear I need is an inexpensive pair of blue sneakers. They have a soft fabric top and soft rubber-like soles. I get them in one size too large so I can wiggle my toes. I feel as free as though I were barefoot. And I can usually get about 1,500 miles to a pair of shoes. Wow. Okay. I'm just going to let that lie there. What an amazing thing to be able to say. I get 1,500 miles to a pair of shoes. All right. That's amazing. I wear a pair of navy blue socks. There's a reason why I chose navy blue for my wearing apparel. It's a very practical color. It doesn't show dirt, and the color blue does represent peace and spirituality. I don't discard any article of wear until it becomes worn to the extent of being unusable. Once, when I was about to leave town, a hostess said, "Peace, I noticed your shoes were in need of repair, and I would have offered to repair them, but I know so much about sewing that I knew they couldn't be repaired." I said to her, "It's a good thing I know so little about sewing that I didn't know they couldn't be repaired, so I just finished repairing them." The first few years, I used a blue scarf and a blue sweater during chilly weather, but I eventually discarded them as not really essential. I am now so adjustable to changes in temperature that I wear the same clothes summer and winter, indoors and out. Like the birds, I migrate north in the summer and south in the winter. If you wish to talk to people out of doors, you must be where the weather is pleasant, or people just won't be out. When the temperature gets high and the sun gets hot, there is nothing so welcome as shade. There is a special coolness about the shade of a tree, but unless it is a big tree, some shifting is required to stay in the shade. Clouds provide shade as they drift across the sun. A rock provides what I call deep shade. So does a bank early in the morning or a late afternoon. Sometimes even the shade of a bush is appreciated, or that of a haystack. Man-made things provide shade too. Buildings, of course, and even signs which disfigure the landscape. They provide shade. So do bridges, providing shelter from the rain as well. Of course, one can wear a hat or carry an umbrella. I do neither. Once, when a reporter asked if by chance I had a folding umbrella in my pocket, I replied, "I won't melt. My skin is waterproof. I don't worry about a little discomfort." But I've sometimes used a piece of cardboard for a sunshade. Water is something you think of in a hot day, but I have discovered that if I eat nothing but fruit until my day's walk is over, I do not get thirsty. Our physical needs are so simple. You see just how this doing, uh, not fantasizing about these ways of living, not fantasizing about these changes or lifestyle things that we could do, right? But to do them leads to these experiments, leads to these learnings, leads to this understanding. And I like how it just seems to be bringing her life into a new harmony and so naturally. She talks about these things so positively. There's no hint of like we said, the talk of renunciation, you know, doing away with, getting rid of, discipline, it's just going for what makes life the best it can possibly be. And that is such a refreshing way of looking at all of this, right? All of the renunciation of spiritual life, all of the discipline of spiritual life, none of it is about renunciation. None of it is about discipline. All of it is about becoming the greatest lovers in the world. That's what it's about. That's why you renounce, not because for any other reason. It's going to make you a beautiful person. It's going to make you what you've always wanted to be, So find that courage, find that inspiration, inside. I'm feeling really challenged by it right now, really inspired actually, just to think about this because I'm in a position now, I've got a whole list of these things I've wanted to start and haven't started. And just seeing them put in this light and just seeing it in her life like this, oh, delightful. It almost makes it look just like, wow, I just want to get up and start right now, go write another letter like this. This is freedom. This is what we're learning here. We're learning freedom. After a wonderful sojourn in the wilderness, right? I remember walking along the streets of a city when I had been in my home for a while. It was 1 p.m. Hundreds of neatly dressed human beings with pale or painted faces hurried rather orderly lines to and from their places of employment. I, in my faded shirt and well-worn slacks, walked among them. The rubber soles of my soft canvas shoes moved noiselessly along beside the clatter of trim, tight shoes with stilt-like heels. In the poorer section, I was tolerated. In the wealthier section, some glances seemed a bit startled, and some were disdainful. On both sides of us, as we walked, were displayed the things we can buy if we are willing to stay in the orderly lines day by day, year after year. Some of the things are more or less useful, many, utter trash. Some have a claim to beauty, many are garishly ugly. Thousands of things are displayed, and yet, my friends, the most valuable are missing. Freedom is not displayed. Health is not displayed. Happiness is not displayed. Peace of mind is not displayed. To obtain these things, my friends, you too may need to escape from the orderly lines and risk being looked upon disdainfully. To the world, I may seem very poor, walking penniless and wearing or carrying in my pockets my only material possessions. But I am really very rich in blessings which no amount of money could buy. My health, my happiness, my inner peace. The simplified life is a sanctified life. Much more calm, much less strife. Oh, what wondrous truths are unveiled. Projects succeed which had previously failed. Oh, how beautiful life can be. Beautiful simplicity. All right. So we'll stop there. Right. 4:30 to 5:30, right? All right, let me stop the recorder here. Hmm. Boy, this thing has been doing this a lot. The buttons don't work. Can you guys see me moving at least? Okay. I guess everything except the iPad is working here. So I can't. Anyway, we'll just have Q&A this way and I'll edit it out later for some reason. Wow. It's lost its touch sensitivity. All right. Anybody have anything they want to say or share as I sit here and tap my screen uselessly?
I knew a monk who lived like that, but even simpler than that. He just had
Mm.
one rope and he traveled without food. He's a Buddhist monk, and he traveled like thousands of miles in Himalaya in flippers and just carrying little tiny little bag